Hello, Metal Temple. This is HP Buttcraft, and what you're about to hear is my interview with frontman, guitar player, and saxophonist of the Norwegian band Shining, Jørgen Munkeby. We talk about the band's new album and the meaning behind the term Blackjazz. Also, Jørgen and I have an interesting chat about our favorite saxophone players and our mutual respect and intimate relationships with that particular instrument. Plus, we get around to talking about what it was like to play a show on a mountainside cliff and the perils of being 2,300 feet above the ground. I hope you all will enjoy my conversation with musician Jørgen Munkeby of Shining. Hey, Jørgen.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Cool. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, great place.
Yeah. Are you initially originally from there?
I'm from Texas. I'm not from Austin, but yeah, I was born and raised in Texas.
Yeah, I've heard people talked about Austin as a dot of blue and a sea of red. Is that or is it the other way around?
That's actually a quote from our former governor, Rick Perry, who ran for president twice and dropped out twice. He called Austin the blueberry in the tomato soup. That was his phrase.
Oh, it was that the thing?
Yeah.
The funny thing about red and blue is that conservative and blue is Democrat. Like red is right and blue is left in a way. While in Europe, red is left and blue is right.
Is that because the red represents like more of a socialist, like a democratic socialist party?
Probably that's where it started, and blue was just probably the opposite. The blue is the capitalist parties here, they're blue, and all the socialist parties are red.
That's interesting to think about. So I already got a whole list of questions prepared, so I'll just jump right into them. So today is a special day because International Blackjazz Society comes out today. I think in the United States.
Well, it was supposed to come out today, and it got moved back a week. So, and I think that's the same with the U.S. But some people haven't. You know how the internet is. When you post something, it sticks. So there's a lot of places where it still says the 16th. So it is a special day because it was supposed to come out today.
Well, that's a little disappointing because I wanted to have you take some time to talk about the album, say whatever you want everybody to understand about the new album, because this is sort of like is it a continuation of the Blackjazz album that came out a few years ago?
Yeah. To me, it is a. Yeah, I would call it a continuation, or kind of like a continuation, and I'm still kind of exploring the Blackjazz universe in a way, While before Blackjazz, we made a lot of big changes, like radical changes, and I think after Blackjazz we have done a few changes, but we haven't, consciously, been made radical changes, because I felt like arriving at the Blackjazz thing, it just felt really, really natural. It felt like something that it felt like a place in musical history that kind of deserved to be explored more, and I loved doing it. I grew up with metal music when I was a kid, and then after a while I started getting into jazz music, and really spent about 10 years only playing and studying jazz music. So, and then I went back to the metal world. So those two musical styles are the ones I love the most. And with the Blackjazz, I was able to do both of them. So it feels like since Blackjazz, I've kind of decided to stay around that area for a bit, to be able to kind of explore it more.
I was talking with someone recently about Shining, and they didn't really understand the genre name Blackjazz. So I guess, how would you describe Blackjazz to just someone who knows absolutely nothing about what that is, anyways, but who has just a general understanding of music.
Well, the name comes from the idea to the name was taken from two albums, 1961, called Free Jazz, or it ended up being called Free Jazz, the collective improvisation by Ornette Coleman double quartet, but it was meant to be called only Free Jazz. And Ornette Coleman is a jazz player from the U.S., sax player, and he's one of the people that have later been contributed to being the kind of the founders of the black jazz style in jazz, along with John Coltrane and a few others. And then the second album I was thinking about was Black Metal by Venom, came out in 1982, and that also gave the name to a musical style, a musical genre called black metal. So both of these kind of were album titles that spawned a musical genre later. I love those kind of album names. Well, I think they're kind of dry and they're not like a poetic name. They're more like a political statement in a way, and I think that was really cool. And also the fact that they gave the name to a musical genre. So the idea for us was to make a name like that, and I took one word from one of them and another word from the other one and put them together, so it ended up being black jazz. And I also, there's the musical mix is, well, there are many ways of playing jazz music. You got bebop, you got Dixieland, you got hard bop, and also in the metal world there's a lot of different musical different genres. And there's free jazz. I think is one of the elements in jazz music that I felt worked well with. Since I'm from Norway and I was into black metal at that time, I felt that there was a lot of links and a lot of parallels between free jazz music on one side and black metal on the other one. For instance, free by the musicians wanting to free themselves from the constraints of the previous ways of playing jazz music. Like they wanted to free themselves, like harmonically, maybe rhythmically. Also, they wanted to play less strict rhythms, and that's the same with black metal. Also, free jazz wanted to focus more on. They didn't focus that much on the techniques, and they focused more on the atmosphere and the mood of the music. And that's the same with black metal. They also went away from the technical focus to more of a vibe, and free jazz also wanted to, go more back to the primal roots of jazz music and also the religious roots. So make it more raw, more primal, and also more spiritual. And that's the same with black metal. It is raw, primal, and very spiritual. So those links are very. It made it. It took 20 years. It took 20 years for me to figure out how to play. Especially to play saxophone to metal music in a way that I felt worked. When I was 9 years old, when Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power came out in '92, I was 12 years old at that time. I remember sitting in my room playing the sax to that album, and it probably sounded shit, but 18 years later, Blackjazz came out, and that's when I finally felt that this is a way of combining the music. And it was a lot about not only knowing what worked well together, but knowing what didn't work well together. So, I had to throw out a Brecker way of playing. I had to throw out, Pantera's music didn't work that well. It was technical metal didn't. I felt personally it didn't work that well with the jazz music I wanted to blend. I know that a lot of other metal bands try to combine technical metal with jazz. I'm just talking about my personal way of combining it. So that's the story behind the name Black Jazz, and also the story behind the music Black. And in addition, even though Black Jazz consists of two parts, the black and the jazz. There are, of course, a few other things that have been important in the music. First of all, probably the the industrial production of it. So the industrial part of it is definitely because combining like free jazz is could be a kind of like a dirty or a messy or a very uncommercial type of music. That's how I view it. And the same with black metal. It's very dirty and raw and uncommercial.
Yeah.
And combining these two kind of maybe could make it even less, maybe could make it unlistenable,
Okay.
So the idea, what I liked about the industrial artists, especially, Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, was that they were able to make aggressive music, but also make it sound, polished and clean and, accessible. And so I bought all their albums, through all their booklets, and tried to figure out who was, involved in kind of making these kind of sounds. And I got hold of a producer in Los Angeles called Sean Bevan, who had worked with both of these bands, both Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, from the beginning and like far out into their career, and also still from time to time. So I sent him a couple of demos, and he loved the music. And my idea was to kind of blend free jazz and black metal, or free jazz and metal in general, and then have it sound somewhat like the industrial bands I was talking about. And I think that's also an important element in Shining, and it's become more important even, than it was on Blackjazz. So I think those three elements are what makes Blackjazz.
Okay. So I wanted to bring you back, because you were mentioning before about how Shining has made such a huge drastic change from their earlier stuff. I wanted to take you back to the first record from 2001, Where the Ragged People Go.
Yeah.
Because it's essentially a jazz album with no electric instruments at all. Yes. And there was nothing on the album that was blackened in any way, if you get my meaning.
Nothing.
Yeah. So when you look back at that record, can you explain what changed in you to evolve the music you make now, that it's just so wildly different and extreme compared to the music you did on Where the Ragged People Go?
Have you been able to track that album down and get hold of it?
I haven't gotten a hold of it. I only heard about it off of a website, and they were mentioning how drastically different it was compared to the Blackjazz material and anything after that.
It's been out of print, for a long time. It's been sold out, and nobody repressed it. And I got the rights back, but at that time, the label went bankrupt and was sold to somebody else, and I just kind of disappeared. And then I started thinking. Then I got the rights back. So I have the rights back for both that album and the album that came after. So our first two albums were both like acoustic jazz albums, but they're hard to get hold of. So, and maybe I'll re-release them sometime in the future, but I always tend to have enough to deal with and to focus on new stuff. But anyway, you're right. It is an acoustic jazz album, the first one. There's nothing there to suggest that will end up sounding like we do now. But I think that scope, that trajectory from Where the Ragged People Go, from like being an acoustic jazz quartet going to become black jazz, like an industrial jazz metal band, doesn't tell the whole story, because there was something happening before that again. I grew up being a metal kid, and like so that's what I listened to when I was a kid, and then I started playing the saxophone, and even then I didn't listen to metal, not to jazz music. And then after a couple of years after that, again I got totally into jazz music and ended up being a jazz musician fully. That was the only thing I cared about, and I studied jazz music at the State Academy of Music in Oslo. And in 1999, when I started there, that's when Shining, our band started. So at that time, all of us were studying jazz music, and we were into jazz music, even though all of us also had the kind of background that I had with different other types of music. The band started as a jazz band, so it was more of a finding my way back to the metal things, while still bringing with me the new knowledge of the jazz stuff. That's what happened, and it took a lot of time. And the first thing that happened was that I probably got a bit tired of. I was really into learning jazz music by the book, how it should be, and then I felt that I should do that first, and then after I've done that, it could be time to change to break the rules if I wanted to, and it took me some years, and then I started feeling like I got a bit tired of chasing the pure jazz music, and I felt that I had kind of done it, and I felt like I wanted to make some more unique kind of music. That's when the quest for Blackjazz started.
Okay. This should be an easy one. What's the make and model of the tenor saxophone you use on your records?
It is. I've only had. Let me just write down something. I've only had one tenor sax in my life. I've had a soprano sax, and I've had an alto sax, but the tenor sax is the one I play the most now. I have done in my life, and I've only had one, and it's a Mark 6, Selmer Mark 6 sax from probably, I think, 78 or something like that.
Yeah.
I've tried a lot of different mouthpieces and a lot of different reeds and setups, and I've considered. I tried for some time. I tried, running the mic through guitar pedals or wah-wah pedals or through an amp, and then I considered drilling a hole in the mouthpiece and inserting, contact mics in there, because the microphone was feeding when you put it through the guitar stuff, and then a certain period I was, really into playing so like a synth sax, a so-called EY, electronic wind instrument, which is a synthesizer with sax fingerings, and but what I've arrived at is the Van Doren V16 mouthpiece with some reeds called Fibrocell, which is a artificial thing, because I was so tired of getting into the airplane and having a reed that worked well that I'd prepared and broken in for a couple of days, and then arriving in a new city or a new country with a different humidity in the air, and then the fucking reed is unplayable because of the change in the air. So I was tired of spending time on that kind of stuff, so I have that set up, and I've just stuck with it, and I hope that I don't feel the urge to change it, because it takes so much energy when you start looking into, when you start looking for the perfect setup, even if it's a sax or if it's a guitar setup or if it's, preamps or whatever it is, because the options are endless. Are you a sax player?
I'm just starting to learn the sax. I've actually been going to school for woodwind instrument repair.
Oh.
So I've had a lot of hands-on experience understanding the functionality of the saxophone, and
okay.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm still trying to get my foot in the door as far as like finding a career in that. But I've been
a career in instrument repairs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of repairs for my sax myself along the way, because I always felt like that was part of being a musician. So understanding how it worked and need to fix something if you're on a show or on a tour, you can't really to mommy and ask her to fix the fucking sax,
Right.
So even though there are stuff that needs, other people, obviously the pro guys can do it better than me, but I always, it is. I've done a lot of stuff on my sax. Some stuff that have worked, stuff that haven't worked. For instance, the Mark 6 is I haven't. I think most of them they're not internally not really always in pitch. Some notes are higher than they should, and some are maybe lower and more. And then you got try to balance. You need to balance that with something, either with mouth or you could do some work with holes. I kind of contacted the holes in a way by putting in tape parts inside the holes, or maybe some other material to make it, or lowering the action of the keys. But it is really interesting field. And when you're good at it, there's one guy in Norway that I always use, and he's so good. So,
yeah, it's a very niche field, so I feel it's so fascinating because it kind of combines a lot of things that I really love, like working with my hands and music, and yeah. But I'm going off the rails here. We're supposed to be doing an interview. So I wanted to ask you about your experience performing with Shining on Trolltunga for that music video you produced, and you also did the video editing for. Can you talk about that?
I actually did the video editing too. I was it was the reason I did it myself was that I actually wasn't. The idea was always to record the show and to film it, but it was a huge project, and it was other people than me involved, local people, and other people that paid for a lot of it. It was kind of like a joint thing. So we paid for ours, but other people had other interests in the project, and we're doing it to kind of promote that area for tourists, and because it costs a lot, so it was local banks kind of paying some of it, and so I wasn't the one in touch with. I wasn't hands-on producing I didn't hire the film team. It was the local people doing that. So I had a lot of. It was a lot of stuff to deal with before the show, and I actually wasn't sure that we would be able to film it and would be able to get the audio, because there's so much stuff that could go wrong up there,
Oh yeah.
So, but after the show, actually everything worked. We got the audio and almost all the cameras worked. But I still, I wanted to. First, I sat down to just try to figure out if we could make something of it, and if we had enough footage, and because the drone had to go down to change the battery from time to time, and there's always, you never know. We didn't have 1,000 camera people. We had quite a few. So, and I started doing it, and I kind of loved fooling around with it, and I just decided to do it myself. So that, that's the, I do like working with your hands. I also kind of like working. Sometimes I just like figuring out how it works,
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to figure out how the video software worked.
Man, there were so many crazy things about that video. First of all, like, how hard was it to get your drummer's kit on that cliff hit? Like, that must have been so hard.
of all of the stuff needed to be flown up with helicopters, which was it took a lot of planning to make sure we had we made everything we needed up, and exactly how much it weighed and the dimension of everything, because we needed to know if the helicopter could fit it all, and so everything had to be perfect, and we couldn't bring a lot of backup stuff, but we still needed all the stuff we needed, because if one cable short, then we couldn't play the show, because this was in the middle of the fucking mountain. There's no way you can go and get new stuff. It would take a day, So we got it up there, and then, but another, one thing is getting it up there. Another thing is making it stay up on that thing, because that rock is kind of slanted, and it kind of tilts. The place we wanted, it's not that big either, so we wanted to have the drums on one side, because I wanted to be able to walk in and out of that cliff and move around. So we put the drums kind of back on the back edge, but kind of backwards towards that edge. So to be able to have the drums up there without them rolling up, we need to build a drum rise, and to kind of make it horizontal. That one thing, it needed to be and feel kind of solid, but another thing is to make sure that drum rise didn't slide off, with 700 meters right down, that's about 300 feet. So if you fall off the edge, you're dead.
Yeah.
And that we wouldn't want to do that.
Wow. Yeah, and I loved how the bass player was just right at the tip of that cliff the whole time.
He's a new guy in the band. So
this next question, I'm sure you've gotten it before, but how hard has it been for Shining to have to keep people from confusing them with the Swedish band Shining?
Well, I think in the end, it's not really our responsibility in a way. We have decided to just stick with a name and not really make a big deal out of it, and the Swedish guys have done the same. I think they're just like us. They're just making the best music they can make and doing the best they can, and that's the same with us. And so we don't have any, there's no rivalry between us and no bad blood. I haven't met him many times. I met him once, the guy from Sweden, but he's a great guy, and so I don't want to make a big deal out of it. And I think what we can do, our first job is to try to make great music, and the next thing we can do is just inform people that we're the Norwegian Blackjazz band, and they can inform people that they're the Swedish band. And then apart from that, I think it's not that hard to separate us. We have very different logos, and the music, even though both types of music is heavy music, it's still different. And also, the worst thing that can happen is that somebody puts on a type of music that they didn't expect, and that's not really the end of the world.
Right.
So I've had my periods of time, especially right after we released Blackjazz and started getting much more attention in the metal world than we'd had before. I was worried if it was going to be a problem, and then, but after a while, I didn't pay that much attention, and now I'd never think about it. And I've learned how the internet works. The internet has become a parody of itself, and the people shouting on the internet are usually the least resourceful people. So you don't want to put too much thought in the internet trolls.
Yeah.
So basically, that's where it's at. I don't think about it that much now at all.
I wouldn't think you would, but I just figured I'd ask anyway.
Yeah, but it is, it is something, from time to time it's something I have to deal with because, everything is becoming automatic now. So from time to time, you gotta, contact iTunes to make sure the new album is placed in, our catalog and not the Swedish one. And, especially with, digital stuff, computers are pretty dumb. So they, they're usually the ones making the mistake. They have the wrong bio or the wrong picture, or they put the Swedish album in our catalog or the other way around. And sometimes I don't mind, but a few times I think it's, I focus on the few times that it matters, and sometimes people contact me, I'm just in touch now with Tidal, which was which is a big streaming company that.
Yeah, Jay-Z owns the company.
Yes, he bought a Norwegian company that's called Wimp, and they obviously changed the name,
Uh-huh.
And they have they're doing a lot of stuff for a new album, and they also wanted to they have a new they're brushing up their whole everything about their system because it's new. So they wanted to kind of make our profile a complete profile. So they didn't have any info at all, but and they actually had the picture of a Dutch band, not called Shining, but called The New Shining, which is kind of funny.
Huh.
So they wanted to kind of update that. So from time to time, I kind of step in and help sorting out computers' mistakes, but most of the time I don't. It's not affecting us,
So this is going to be my last question, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Real quick, who are some of your personal saxophone heroes that you would want the readers of the interview to try to venture out and listen to them?
Yeah. Well, I listen to a lot of sax players, and a lot of them are have been important to me, and also have been important to the black jazz style or music that we're doing now. Some of them have only been important to me and haven't really didn't really end up being part of how I play black jazz. So, for instance, Michael Brecker is a guy that I think he was an amazing sax player. He kind of defined a very virtuosic and technical and groovy kind of playing, which I think is great, and I've practiced a lot to kind of do that kind of stuff. But in the end, I felt that way of playing didn't fit well with the music I was playing, so I don't really play like him anymore in black jazz. But he's an important guy, and you can check out his first album called Michael Brecker, for instance. But another guy that John Coltrane is really like my biggest sax hero, and his playing is still part of how I play in Shining, and he's his biggest in my book. His biggest albums are Giant Steps. I think it's from '56 or something. I'm not really sure about exactly when it's from, but some '59, sometimes in the '50s, and then an album Crescent from 1964. Released the same year as Love Supreme, which is his most famous album. And then they could also dive into his later periods that have a lot of amazing stuff from Expression or Meditations, or even his last studio album called Interstellar Space, which is far out and really, really cool. And Albert Ayler is he's got an album called Spiritual Unity, which I love, and his way of playing is also has affected my sound and my way of playing in Shining.
What about Moondog? You ever hear of him?
Moondog? No.
He was an American reed musician. And he was called the Viking of New York City because he would dress like a Viking And he had this
I see
giant, long white beard.
I see pictures of him on